All right, we're back. It's another Carolina podcast. I'm your host, Pearson Fowler. With me, as always, Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell. Now, a couple days removed from a traumatizing loss for South Carolina. I didn't know what to call it. We're just gonna go with a traumatizing loss, 34-14 at Missouri. I hope you guys all caught the no huddle version of another Carolina podcast early Monday morning when Chris and Wes gave their instant reactions to the game. Like I said, we're a couple days removed now, so we're going to try and take a look at some bigger picture things. But there's no real other way to look at it, no other place to start than that was a terrible loss that was very emblematic of so many of the things that have gone wrong in the Will Muschamp era here at South Carolina. The Gamecocks are now 1-3. They haven't beaten an FBS opponent, and they're 3-7 in their last 10 games against FBS opponents. So what stood out to you from the Missouri game that you feel like encapsulates this troubling trend for Carolina?
Missed opportunities. I mean, just in a general sense. We can break that down a little bit further in more detail. But I think missed opportunities, whether it's, you're backed up and you had the sort of freakish mistake by Helinski sort of catching the ball and throwing it down. That's a defensive score. You have going down, driving down 10 with a chance to, at the minimum, get a field goal. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, score a touchdown, cut it to 3. And, they go in at the half down 10 and you don't feel awful about it because they played so poorly in the first half. Yeah, they could be down a lot more than this. They drive down, have put together a really good drive, think fourth down conversion on that drive. And then, it's a 14-point swing. So instead of cutting it to 3 or cutting it to 7 at worst, you give up a touchdown and you come away with no points. So another missed opportunity. You look at a lot of third down situations. They were unable to get off the field. Some penalties that were untimely. A few things that were a little bit out of their control with some poor calls. Definitely didn't lose them the game. Poor calls on both sides, I thought. And so just a lot of missed opportunities. Again, that to me is really what it came down to.
What was one thing that stuck out to you? Chris took missed opportunity. What was one thing that stuck out to you from the Missouri game that was emblematic of this team's failure to get over the hump under Will Muschamp?
You may have made this point. I'm definitely stealing this from someone. I'm hoping it was you. I don't know who said this, but I agreed 100%. South Carolina has struggled to play well on offense and defense. Did you say this? In the same game. Even in the same quarter, it seems like. It's always one or the other at different times. And I want to see them be able to put it together on both sides for a complete performance. And I thought, did the defense have some issues in this game? Absolutely. But did the defense play a good bit better than we've seen them play? I thought so, especially in the first half. They were consistently put back on the field. When your offense has 30 yards in the first half,
one first down,
that's
bad.
You're deep, and I thought South Carolina's defensive line, at least in the first half and at times in the second half, looked like the defensive line we all thought they were this preseason.
I think they've just straight up been good this year, like all year long. So as a defensive line,
I thought they owned. There were times early on, especially when Missouri almost literally had to hold on every single deeper passing attempt in order to block South Carolina. And even when they weren't getting penetration against the run, they were holding the point of attack and letting their linebackers make tackles. Did some sort of longer runs develop as the game went on and as they got worn down? Yes. But, I thought, God, the defense, obviously 14 of those points aren't on South Carolina's defense. And South Carolina's defense
was on the field for 91 plays.
And essentially, they scored you a touchdown, even though, it was out at the 1. But they scored you that touchdown.
I wish DJ scored that.
And they put you in a position at, the Missouri 30? That ended up being a missed field goal. I mean, the defense put you in a position to win the game. And on this particular game, the offense wasn't what it was. And I don't, sometimes that's because of matchups, right? Like, your offense is going to be worse against a great defense, et cetera, et cetera. But that wasn't the case here. There were plays to be made. There were plays for the offense that were there. Now, Missouri's defensive line, I think, ate South Carolina's offensive line, for lunch, I think. But other than that, you look at me like that, dude. They They dominated up front.
They did.
They did. You don't think so?
No, I wouldn't say dominated.
See,
Muschamp said they got whipped. If he says they got whipped, I think
you have to be better on the offensive
I think
front.
Missouri's defensive line won the battle against Carolina's offensive line. I don't think it was overwhelming. People say, "Oh, there were 4 sacks." Well, there were 3 of those that were essentially in garbage time. And after Missouri was up 34-14 with 7 minutes or fewer to go in the fourth quarter, there was 1 sack basically in the run of play. And South Carolina's inability to run the ball has less to do with the offensive line and more to do with play calling, which is where I wanted to go with this. Is South Carolina. I like your point, and I made it. I probably wasn't the first person to make it, so I'm not taking credit for it. Their inability to be good on offense and defense at the same time makes me think that maybe they just have like 11 players, and sometimes they play offense and sometimes they play defense, and then whatever the other unit is just like backups or something. Because there's other than that, over the course of 4 years, you think on accident they would play well on offense and defense in the same game at least once, but it hasn't happened in 4 years yet. So it must be some kind of like body switching, jersey number switching, something like that. But for me, it's just general offensive ineptitude that I was fooled after 2 weeks of outstanding offensive productivity, at least in terms of yards, in terms of ability to move the football, if not scoring, because Carolina, failed to capitalize a couple of times in terms of scoring opportunities against Alabama. Some of those were their fault. Some of those were not, going back to some officiating errors. But I thought that those issues had been resolved. I thought Jake Bentley was the problem, so I thought Ryan Helinski fixed that. But it seems like the problem is philosophical, and whether it's Will Muschamp, whether it's Brian McClendon, I tend to think it's Will Muschamp because it's a similar problem that we saw with Kurt Roper, although you could say it is McClendon because now there's more talent, and we have seen the flashes of what that offense could do that we never even really saw when Roper was the offensive coordinator. So I don't know exactly what to believe, but when Will Muschamp says that they tried to establish the run early, and South Carolina's running backs have a combined 2 carries on the first 5 drives, either he's lying or he doesn't understand his own game plan, and I don't know which one it is.
Well, I think so. One thing you got to look at there is, we said you can't take too much from the Charleston Southern game. You can't take too much from Alabama, but we saw this team move the ball against Alabama. Now, one thing, there's a disparity in snaps. Against Alabama, and there are many reasons for this, they took 89 offensive snaps. It's pretty good, and they moved the football. They had some things that did not work out, just had a turnover or 2. They didn't punch the ball in from the 1-yard line against Alabama, et cetera, but they moved the ball pretty well. I don't think anyone walked away from that game saying, man, this offense stinks after the Alabama game. Not at all. So I think what you got to look at is it more of an outlier or is it a trend? I don't even know if we can say it's a trend so far this year because the North Carolina game was another bad offensive performance, but
with a different quarterback.
Different quarterback.
And 2 different offensive linemen.
So all I'm saying is I don't know if we can even look at Missouri and say it's a trend because the quarterback play in the Missouri game was not very good. They didn't run the football well. Should they have tried to be a little more hard-headed with it? Probably so. I think we can agree on that. As far as the game plan, it probably would have worked better and looked better if, they used a lot of RPO concepts in this game. And they noted, and if you go back at the film, I agree with it, just based on my limited knowledge of what they're calling against what particular front, Ryan did make good decisions in the RPO game, it looked like. He had a lot of open receivers on short hitch routes and things like that. He just didn't hit them. That makes it tough. And, if there was a play that DeCarrion Joyner came in, Wes and I talked about this, they run sort of the diamond formation thing, got absolutely blown up for a 3-yard loss. That's a bad. That was not a good call in that situation.
Once was like a bad read on an RPO and a keep, and then the other one was, I think, officially credited as a sack or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. In that look, in my opinion, you're sort of telegraphing what you're going to do. Missouri looks like they're bringing the house. They do. You get blitzkrieg. So I don't think that's a great call in that situation. You need to change the call. I don't have a problem with if a team lines up and they said we're going to run RPO. Missouri's loading the box. They bring an extra defender down and you throw it. That's a good call. Because what would be the alternative? If we're sitting here and we're saying, Brian McClendon, Missouri's loading the box and you're just running into the loaded box every time and you're not getting anything, we'd be blasting him for that too, right? So I think the point of an RPO is you look at what the defense is giving you. Now, sometimes you are going to have to be, maybe you got to run into a loaded front more.
Well, when I hear Will Muschamp say we need to run the football more, I'm like, you know what a really easy solution to running the football is more? Call more running plays.
Well, and that's
not
what,
difficult. And you know what?
Yeah.
He said that in a press conference almost this exact time last year. I think it was,
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly what week it was,
yep.
but he said that same thing. And it's like, wait a second. Like, is this a glitch in the matrix? Like, what's going on? We've seen this exact thing before. How do you not fix this the first time? 2 carries combined for your running backs in the first 5 drives. 2 running backs that going into this game were averaging over 5 yards a carry. Rico was averaging like 7.5 yards a carry. I don't care what the game plan is. You have a freshman quarterback who has a sore elbow, who was missing badly early, who clearly needed to settle down because there was probably some nervousness or just needed some time to adjust to playing his first true road game in the SEC. But rather than then leaning on the rushing attack, it was like, okay, we're going to put DeCarrion Joyner in there, which has been an outrageous success every time they've done it this year, /S. Or we're just going to say, oh, well, we're just going to have him throw out of it and just let him keep making mistakes and missing throws and deflating the entire team, which, as you mentioned, the defense played very well. They gave up 20 points on 91 plays. That's pretty good. And obviously the offense spotted them 14 points direct. I mean, the offense scored as many points for Missouri as they did for themselves.
They ran 67 plays on offense. Is all
67
they had.
plays on
22.
The reliance on the
RPO
has become a problem. Let's do this. Let's do this as an exercise. In the last 4 years, what are the really good offensive games that Carolina's had? There's a South Florida game.
Clemson
last year.
Well, let's
Florida for about 2.5 quarters.
Okay. The Alabama game had almost 500 of offense. Was it 31 or 32 first downs, which is like as many as Alabama's given up this decade?
Mm-hmm.
What's the common thread in all of those games? Lost to South Florida. Lost to Florida last year. Lost to Clemson by 21. Lost to Alabama by 24. Carolina's best offensive games have all been irrelevant. And you can say that's probably correlation more than it is causation, because those were some woeful defensive performances that Carolina was going up against. But when Carolina has needed to execute offensively at any point in the last 4 years, they haven't been able to. And it's because they're very reliant on, I don't want to say a simplistic form of offense, because I think it is very complex. But I had somebody tweet at me either yesterday afternoon or this morning with a really good point saying, basically the way that Carolina runs the RPO seems to be such that defenses can make them do exactly what they want to do. The way that Carolina approaches the RPO, if a defense wants Carolina to hand it off, it's really easy to influence that. If they want Carolina to throw it because Ryan Helinski is off, whether because of a combination of sore elbow or because, adjusting to life on the road in the SEC, it's very easy to manipulate that to get them to do exactly what they wanted to. And that's what Missouri did. Missouri made South Carolina look like a JV offense on Saturday. And they're not as good defensively as Alabama.
All right, let me get in on this one.
Go for it.
And this will fall right back in your category of it can be both things. Because I believe that they have become over-reliant on the RPO. At times, you just have to be hard-headed in the running game, blah, 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 blah. We all agree on that, I think. Do you agree on that too, Chris? At times, they need to just be hard-headed and run the football?
Yeah.
At times.
Or just call plays.
So, first of all, what you just said is it's not the Carolina RPO. That's everybody's RPO. Like, that's the case with every RPO is that, the defense can dictate what you're going to do, but the point being you have it built into the play to do something that is more advantageous for the offense. And that's not something that's new for RPOs. I mean, in college football or football in general for years, you'll have guys, is there an extra guy in the box? We're going to throw the football. Let's check. It's a check at that point. It's an audible or check to the sideline, et cetera, et cetera. There's a guy in the box. We're going to throw the football. There's not a guy in the box, so 2 safeties are deep. We're going to run the football. That's nothing new. I mean, yes, you can say, well, that's the defense dictating things, but actually, if there's an extra guy in the box, there's more room to throw the football. If there's not an extra guy in the box, you have the numbers up front to run the football. So I don't really think that's anything new with RPOs. The throws were there early on. And if those throws hit and you actually stay on the field a little while, then Rico Daddle, Tavian Feaster, the reason, all the stats get skewed if you just can't stay on the field. If you're on the field, then you get to your other things. It's easy for us to say, those plays didn't work. Those were bad calls. They should have got the ball to the running backs. But to Chris's point, if you're slamming your head up against an 8-man box, then you put Ryan Helinski in a worse situation than he would have been anyway, because now he's throwing on 3rd and 9, and you're against a look that's not a loaded box because they know you have to throw, and they're pinning their ears back on your offensive line, which we saw as the game went along. Once they could pin their ears back, you were able to, you were not able to protect Ryan Helinski. So I'm not saying it worked at all, and I'm not saying there don't need to be changes because I think they do need to make changes schematically. I'm just saying it's not as cut and dry as, you should have run the football more. Like, there were reasons that they were throwing the football, and that's because Missouri was basically saying, we're going to take away the run and make you force you to show that we can run the football, or we can throw the football.
There were reasons that Carolina didn't run the football, but it's not because Missouri was taking away the run. It's because Carolina does not call running plays. They call RPOs and do it based on a read. And you can say, Ryan made the right read, this many times, or Will Muschamp said in his press conference yesterday, we threw the ball like we did against Alabama. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And on the first drive, it's a little bit of a bummer when you go 3 and out and Ryan Helinski misses 3 passes. And I mean, he missed 2 of them. He hit the one to Chavis Dawkins that was also not a good pass. And it's like, wow, that didn't go great. Now maybe let's go back to establishing the run. And I'm the counterpoint to what you're saying about, being in 3rd and 9 and being in these obvious passing situations is Missouri knew Carolina was going to pass it anyway because they didn't run the football. So in both situations, you're putting the pressure on Ryan Helinski. The right answer is, run the football, at least get 2 yards and then get 2 yards. And then you don't have to worry about passing in 3rd and 10. You're passing in 3rd and 6 or something like that. Even if you're not running the ball well, you should be in 3rd and manageable. And I'm not saying just go run, pass every time. But the point is you have to diversify what you do. You have to give them something else to think about. And for Carolina, they did exactly what they did against Alabama, except it wasn't working because Ryan Helinski wasn't hitting, and there was no willingness to adjust. And that's the problem for me. And we've seen that time and again.
I wouldn't say – I don't know if I could say that they completely failed to adjust. I mean, they went in at halftime. They looked at some things that Missouri was doing, and they score on the very first play of the first – I mean, that was a pretty good play call. First play of the half. The second half, Cool. They score a touchdown.
Basically, their only offensive touchdown of the day.
Right.
On a 75-yard catch and run.
But I'm saying, go back and look, the Helinski fumble play. Okay. Missouri's in a 4-man front. They have 3 linebackers. All of them, at the snap, come up to the line, right? All of them. They're coming up to the line because you have Kyle Markway coming across on a little arc block, fake arc block, or a real one if it ends up being a run play. They can hand the ball off. Now, you could say, well, that gives you 7-on-7, basically. And that may be true. But you've got the linebackers all completely crashing down on what would be an inside run. Or you can pull it and throw it to, I think, Brian Edwards when the defensive back's giving him a 7-yard cushion. Seems like a good decision to pull it and throw it to Brian Edwards. Instead, it gets batted, then it ends up being a fumble. So what I'm saying is, yes, at times you may have to – it's hard to say with Helinski struggling like that. Like you mentioned, getting 2 yards on first down, getting 2 yards on second down. And I agree, 3rd and 6 is better than 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. But then we're saying, okay, your quarterback's struggling, so let's get a couple yards and then let's put it in our quarterback's hand on 3rd and 6 and telegraph that we've got to pass the football, which you're doing on 3rd and 9 as well. I mean, it's just it's tough to like balance out. What exactly you do.
I'm saying manage the game. Manage the game. And there's been an inability to do that. Your defense gave up 20 points. They shouldn't have been on the field for 91 plays. Maybe
no.
If they're not on the field
that.
for 58 or whatever it was in the first half, you don't give up all those points. And by and large, what they were giving up was something that I don't want to say it was in the game plan to give up, but Kelly Bryant, who, as y'all both mentioned, has not run a ton this year, had 75 of their 200 yards in the first half on his legs, running the football outside of the pocket, extending plays. That's what a mobile quarterback does. That's what he does to hurt you. But Carolina was willing to mostly sit back, try to play contain, and say, all right, we will give you an 8-yard run every now and then, 75 yards rushing in the first half, but we are not going to let you beat us down the field because you're not that accurate. And he had guys open that he just missed.
Yeah.
But Carolina was basically saying, we will let you try to chip away and bet on your inability to keep drives going. It'll eventually stall. You'll settle for field goals, or for, punts around midfield or whatever. That was a good game plan. That was working. The defensive line played well. TJ Brunson, I think, didn't grade out particularly well. Looked fine to me. The secondary was, fine. It wasn't a bad defensive game plan. All the offense had to do was be competent. You don't have to go out there and throw the ball 57 times and score 119 points. If Carolina scored 31 points in this game, that would have been good enough to win. And their game plan, you would have thought that, I get that they were a 9.5-point underdog, but you would have thought they were playing the New England Patriots the way that they were going out there aggressively trying to win the football game. And before, I know all of you are shouting at your radio or wherever you're listening to this right now, where I am someone that's always in support of being aggressive, trying to get a touchdown at the end of the half, going for it on 4th and shorts. That's not what I'm talking about in terms of this type of aggressiveness. I'm talking about keep your offense on the field, extend drives. Carolina seemed to be going for, I don't know, it just seems like they're trying to do everything all at once rather than, being open to being balanced, sustaining drives, giving their defense time to rest. And it just is something that is philosophical that seems to be cropping up over and over again, year in, year out now.
I think we're getting back to the argument of, was it successful what they did? Obviously not. But I don't think we can sit here and say that it wasn't possible that it could be successful from a from a play calling standpoint. These were not vertical throws. These were not throws where you're stretching the field. These are throws that Ryan Helinski normally makes in his sleep. It wasn't like they were going all out and saying, we have to score on every drive. These were, for the most part, shorter, easier throws. So I think it's more a matter of execution than play calling, especially early in the game. Now, as the game goes on, maybe you say, okay, Helinski, the elbow's bothering him, or he's not himself, or whatever the reason is, then yes, you probably have to adjust and say we're going to be hard-headed with the run. But the running game, when they did run the football, it's not like it was incredibly successful.
You can't do that. Rico Dowdle
I can do that.
No. Rico Dowdle had 8 carries. 8 carries. You could probably find 8 carries from the Alabama game where he had a total of, 12 yards or whatever he had, or 20 whatever yards. That's not how this works. You don't give a running back 5 carries, he only gets 5 yards, and then you say, no, this sucks. This isn't working. Because you give him another 5 carries, maybe he gets 80 yards.
But
that's
you
how this thing
have
works.
to stay on the field
in Missouri,
to do that.
Missouri had given up multiple bits. They gave up 2 60-plus yard rushing touchdowns to Wyoming earlier this year. That was another thing I said on Monday in my Get Cocky podcast. It's not like, Will Muschamp said, they were trying to take away the run. You think when Wyoming was sitting there with 200 yards of rushing, Missouri was saying, we're going to let them run the ball right down our throat for another 200 yards. No, they were trying to stop the run, and Wyoming was like, doesn't matter. We're going to go and rush for another 100 yards, have another 60-plus yard rushing touchdown. You can't just give up with something that is essential to your offense when someone starts game planning against it. So, again, it's about adjustments. People are now litigating, and I don't want to relitigate individual plays so much, but people are saying, it's the same game plan that worked against Alabama. Well, yeah, it wasn't working against Missouri, and that's why you make an adjustment.
Okay.
Cool. You want to buy or sell? Chris, you have anything else?
I was looking over some numbers for a point that I may make, but it would take too long to look it up, to be quite honest with you.
Okay. Well, what's the point?
I got a question, though. And I'm not defending. Obviously, we know they needed to adjust. They made some adjustments. Ryan Helinski he got better as the game went on in terms of accuracy, where what I mean by that is he was hitting some throws that he was missing in the first half. He's at least putting the ball in some situations. They came out, they had the one long play. They tried another one to Edwards. It was just barely good play by the defender down the field. They hit some other things. So the game plan did not work because it wasn't successful. That's obvious. They ran 67 offensive plays. I guess my question is if we're diving this deep into it, what should the adjustments have been? Because we're sitting there saying, well, you got to run the ball. Cool. How? I know it's not our job to figure it out, but we're taking RPO plays in the first half, and I agree. Got to diversify. Even the coaching staff saying we got to look at taking some RPO tags off.
Did they have more than 3 plays?
They do.
Okay,
they run more than 3 plays. So all I'm saying is, if we're taking RPO plays that worked in the sense that it was open, if you call a play and it's open, and the receiver drops it. I mean, the receiver dropped it. Ultimately, everything goes back to the OC with offense, and then it goes back to the head coach, sure. But if you're calling things that from a schematic standpoint are working and they're not working, you can try to adjust and do something else, but maybe those things you don't do as well. I guess what I'm saying is we've seen the North Carolina game plan didn't work primarily because of what? Sometimes they got whipped up front, and maybe there were some schematic things there. We don't have access to all that. We don't know. And the quarterback play was not good. Against Charleston Southern, it worked because South Carolina was clicking and Charleston Southern's awful. Against Alabama, it worked for the most part. I don't think they would have been able to keep up ultimately. It worked because they were on the field a little bit more. They got really good quarterback play for the most part.
They had a good balanced attack.
They had a good balanced attack.
They ran the ball for 135
But
yards.
how many of those plays were RPOs? Do we need to go back and look?
No, but the point is, again, we're relitigating now based on results. The point is not South Carolina should have done this. I think we all agree South Carolina should have tried to run the football more. But you're exactly right. What does that look like? Does that mean get in the I formation and pound it? Does that mean more straight up runs between the tackles, off tackles, pitches, like getting the ball to your running backs in space? What exactly does that mean? I don't know. This isn't about what should the offense have done specifically. The point is what they did on offense was an embarrassment for the first 30 minutes of the game and wasn't much better for the last 30 minutes.
Sure.
You should do something to change that, and they did not do anything to change that. Other than throw a screen pass.
It was just, it was just a discussion on, did we see anything that they could have done in the first half? I don't know. I was just sitting there going, I don't know what they can do.
This offense is very one note. And sometimes it works, and it fools everyone, myself included. Alabama, Clemson, first half against Florida. It's like, wow, hey, this thing really works. And then defenses say, oh, well, let's make this adjustment. And then it doesn't work. And there are no adjustments. There were no adjustments in the Florida game. There's obviously not much you can do to keep up with Clemson, but you still lost that game by, what was the final score? They lost by 21 or 25 or 28 or something. Same thing against Alabama. Against Missouri, it wasn't even working in the first half like it was against Florida last year. And then you still don't make any adjustments, and you get embarrassed. In a game that we all agreed last week on this podcast and just around town, on my local show on 107.5 The Game, there was consensus. Last week and this coming week against Kentucky are the two most important weeks of Will Muschamp's career here at South Carolina. And they could not make adjustments, and they lost by 20.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that in the second half offensively they made no adjustments. I mean, the first drive they scored a touchdown on one play, which is as good as you can do, and the second drive, they go 14 plays, 72 yards on a 5-minute, 7-second drive, and they're basically on the goal line. So I mean, they did something better. They didn't do any of that in the first half. They did none of it. They scored no points. So look, I'm not, and people are going to say, well, you're defending it. You're saying they did a great job. No, they didn't. Nobody's saying that. I'm just saying we can't say do better on offense based on the first half, go do better, and then when they go do better in the second half, we can't say, well, they didn't do anything. You can't say that.
Well, I mean, 7 points in each half, right? The fumble was in the second quarter.
I'm not saying the performance was good enough. It was not good enough by any metric whatsoever. They spotted Missouri, the points that they spotted them through the turnovers, and then they scored 14 points in the game. Not good enough. I'm just saying it's not like they did nothing to try to adjust. I mean, the first two drives, they scored a touchdown on one play. That was an adjustment. We hadn't seen that play. That's something they came out and did. They scored on one play. That's the best possible outcome. Second drive, they go 14 plays, 72 yards. Good-looking drive. It looked great until the end. They throw a pick six. So now you can say, well, after you shouldn't have called that play, and we can say, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have called that play. Maybe you go hand the ball off, on the goal line.
If you want to hand the ball off,
hand the ball off.
Exactly.
Right, or throw it away. Okay.
And Will must have even conceded. He was like, Ryan probably should have handed that one off.
Hand it off, yeah, as an RPA. So maybe we say
if you're getting a favorable look, if you like the run box, if you're on the 1 yard line and you want to hand it off,
just call a run.
Don't give anyone the option to screw that up.
Totally agree with that. There was a play in the Clemson game a few years ago where, Muschamp was explaining it after the game. Remember when Jake Bentley threw the pick six to Ryan Carter, I think? Like, well, it was a read based on the safety. Don't call that backed up that far. Don't give that option. So I can see something. I was just saying I would sort of fight back a little bit on the notion that they did absolutely nothing to adjust. We're just going to go to the exact same. I don't think they did that. Did it still fail on the whole, yes. A little bit better in the second half, yes. But then by that point, your offense has played 54 snaps, or your defense has played 54 snaps in the first half. Defensively, you still can't get it going. So, overall, not good enough for sure. I was just making the point that I do think some of the aspects of the game plan in the first half, the first couple, you don't just say, Ryan missed 2 throws on the first 2 drives. We're not going to throw the ball at all, or we're going to scrap the RPO because he missed a couple.
He missed all 3. The throw to Chavis Dawkins was a great catch and a bad throw.
Yes, yeah.
So then you can't come out and only give 2 carries to your running backs on the next 4 drives combined.
Yeah, you got to be more hard-headed.
That's less than half a carry per running back per drive. That's unconscionable. Both of those guys were all-world through 3 weeks of the season.
It's gotten very tense.
Rico Dowdle ran as well against Alabama. When was the last time we saw anybody run that well against Alabama? Rico Dowdle ran as well 2 weeks ago as Travis Etienne did in the freaking national championship game. And you're going to give that guy 1 carry in the first 5 drives of a must-win game on the road against Missouri when your freshman quarterback hasn't settled into the game yet.
Hey, I mean, I'm not arguing the point.
I'm just asking questions.
Wes has something to say. Wes has been looking at me like I have 2 heads for about 10 minutes.
No, I just think we're moving the target here. Like for at the first part of this, we were discussing the fact of why did this happen? Why did it play out? And then we're going into, well, it didn't work, so that means everything was wrong.
No.
Yes.
I'm not saying that.
I was careful not to make that point. I'm not saying it was wrong because it didn't work.
You said that it was an embarrassment. It looked awful. That
they made no adjustments.
That it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, but that last point, or I guess the penultimate point, was the important one. It's not upsetting because it didn't work. The Alabama game plan was not good just because it worked. The Alabama game plan was good because it worked and they kept doing it. The Missouri game plan was bad because it didn't work and they kept doing it. To Chris's point, 1 good drive in the second half is better than no
2
good drives in the first half. A 1-play 75-yard touchdown isn't a good drive. That's a good play.
It's a touchdown.
But that's also not the problem. The problem is South Carolina can't stay on the field. If they had scored a 75-yard touchdown with Brian Edwards every single time they got the ball, they might have won because they might have scored enough points, but the defense still would have been on the field for 91 plays. And that's the issue, is that South Carolina has lost the time of possession battle in 15 of their last 17 games. And in 8 of those 17 games, or in 8 of those 15 games when they've lost the time of possession battle, it has been by double digits, including against Missouri. That is a problem. On an individual game basis, that's not the end of the world. Time of possession is not, the determining factor that turnover margin or, margin in explosive plays is or anything like that. But when it is 15 out of 17, do you want to guess the 2 games that Carolina's won the time of possession battle in the last 17 games? I won't make you guess. Coastal Carolina, they won by a margin of 4 seconds. And then Chattanooga, they won by 2.5 minutes. Every other game, they've lost or gotten absolutely massacred. And at this point, 17 games into that trend, I think that's telling. I don't know what exactly it tells, but to me, it foretells some kind of ineptitude that was summed up by what we saw on Saturday.
What's the record in those games? I'm just curious. I really don't know.
It's
the last 17 games?
Year. Yeah. Going back to the beginning of last season, and that's why I didn't know what to make of this stat. So you say 1-3, and what were they last year?
So 7-6.
Yeah, 7-6, and then 1-3. So 8-9.
Right.
8-9 with wins over Coastal and Charleston Southern, which they lost the time of possession. Chattanooga, Acorn. Again, when I started keeping track of the stat last year, it wasn't because Carolina was losing all those games. And it was like, oh, what is wrong with the offense? I was like, oh, this is interesting. I want to see where this goes. But now that they've lost their last 5 FBS games, is that right? Clemson, Virginia. They lost the time of possession battle to Virginia by 25 minutes, by the way. North Carolina, Alabama, and Missouri. That number, I think, to me, says something now. I don't know what exactly, but it says something. And the 75-yard Brian Edwards touchdown isn't the answer. I'm not saying that if you're a Carolina fan, you should wish that thing got wiped off the board. But the issue is not Carolina's inability to do that. It's their inability to finish off the 14-play drive or the drive at the end of the half against Alabama.
Missed opportunities. That's what we go back to, yeah. Wesley?
I got nothing else.
You're writing a bunch of stuff.
I was just curious what the run-pass mix was the first half.
Well, how many plays did they run in the first half?
I got 17 offensive plays.
That's not very good. That's not very good.
But my point being that you and this is to your point as well. All the numbers are going to be skewed if you don't find a way to stay on the field, regardless of what you do. Your running backs aren't going to get carries. Just like you could sit there and say, wow, they only threw the ball 10 times in the first half as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the mix is 10 throws to 7 runs.
And how many of those throws in the first half were wide open?
That's what I'm saying.
A bunch of them.
If they hit the first sequence of any drive, I believe, is the most important sequence of the drive. If you make a first down some way, somehow, then you find a rhythm as an offense. Then you get to your secondary stuff. You actually can call plays off of other plays. You actually can start to set up plays and stuff like that. If you don't stay on the field and get a first down via the run or the pass at the beginning of a drive, and obviously this happened to South Carolina multiple times, they had 1 first down, but all of the numbers are going to be skewed. I mean, so first drive, pass, pass, pass. Second drive, run, pass. Third drive, run, pass. Fourth drive, run, pass, pass. Fifth drive, run, pass, pass. Sixth drive, pass, run, pass. So
one of those is a sack. Were any of those other ones quarterback runs?
No, I put the pass.
I guess
put
we
the
know
sack
they were
as
only
a pass.
Okay, all right.
One of them was the Ryan Helinski keeper zone read run, and one of them was the blown up to carry on Joyner play.
And Pearson, to your point, I mean, there were times in the game where I was sitting there watching, and South Carolina would pick up 4 or 5 yards on first down and then pass a couple times. And I was sitting there going, be more hard-headed with the run. Now, schematically, maybe Missouri was doing something that South Carolina had seen on film, and they telegraphed it. South Carolina said, we know they're going to do this, and we can't run against it. Maybe. I don't know.
Do you know what Carolina's one first down in the first half was?
Actually, I don't know.
It was Rico for 11 yards. It looked
Yes.
like, I don't know if
inside
it was an RPO
zone play.
Or inside zone.
It was inside zone.
They block RPO like inside zone, I think, so I don't know if it was an RPO or
yeah,
just
in a lot of
inside
cases.
Zone.
Yeah.
That was the only first down they got.
Yeah.
And again,
a lot of you can look at the receivers and see if they're a lot of times if they're blocking
or running routes,
then it's an inside zone.
I didn't notice it's the second time, but it's not a failure because they only had 16 or 17 plays, offensive plays in the first half. It's not a failure because it didn't work. It's a failure because it didn't work and they didn't make the right adjustments. Is this Missouri team the best defensive team in the country? I don't think so. And Carolina made them look like that. And again, to go back to the time of possession thing and now the plays, on an individual game-by-game basis, is it a disaster that Carolina ran 67 plays against Missouri? No. Sometimes your offense isn't clicking. Your quarterback's not hitting. You're not converting on third down the way that you need to. There are a lot of factors that go into not running a lot of plays, not being able to hold on to the football. And on an individual game-by-game basis, that's not a big deal. But when you look at it over the course of a season and a half since Brian McClendon took over as offensive coordinator, and you say, wow, Carolina is routinely running considerably fewer plays than their opponent and possessing the ball for way less time than their opponent. That is a troubling trend, in my opinion.
Offensively and defensively. I mean, if the other team's possessing the ball a lot defensively, then that's the problem. Now, last year, I mean, goodness, the defense last year, obviously, that's going to be an issue. And it was an issue, against North Carolina this year. In the second half, especially an issue against Missouri. So, all things they got to correct. I'm working on a stat.
It's for this pod, or is it going to be on the site later?
No, I assume we're going to talk about Kentucky a little bit.
Yeah,
eventually in a few hours. I'm blaming myself. I hadn't been able to shut up about the Missouri game. So,
no, I mean it was. I thought that the Florida loss was the worst loss of Will Muschamp's tenure. The Florida loss last season, and I think it was. This replaces that, I think, very comfortably. This is the game that people will look back on when Will Muschamp is coaching somewhere else and say that was, like the Carolina-Florida game when Will Muschamp was at Florida, and it was like the South Carolina game. Everyone says that's the game where Will Muschamp got fired.
Well, it definitely was.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it was. Wait, they fired him before the end of the season?
Yes.
Who was the interim coach?
He finished out the year.
Exactly.
Okay. Didn't coach the bowl game that year.
Yeah.
That year. I feel like they played ECU in a bowl or something. But yeah, he finished out. I think it was South Carolina, and then maybe they had like a cupcake opponent, and then the
Florida State.
FSU game. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So,
But he coached the cupcake in the Florida State game. Just
that's
to
right.
give some
Yeah.
right. So, and I'm not saying he's going to be fired by the end of this season, but this Missouri game, and I think specifically that pick six is going to be. It's like, yep, that's where anyone else that was on the Will Muschamp, what is now a life raft, was a boat, maybe even a ship at the beginning of the season, has now been reduced to a life raft, and now I think it's just like drifting on the ocean by itself with no occupants.
They're in a bad. I would.
They're gonna
maybe
go
West
3-9.
disagrees. I don't know. Maybe
They're 1-3.
they could.
Well, they have 4 toss-up games left, right? They have Kentucky, they have at Tennessee, they have Vanderbilt, and they have App State.
The
And App State
problem.
just beat
The
North
problem
Carolina.
is they lost a should win against North Carolina, and then they lost what I would consider more of a toss up against Missouri. If they were sitting here at 2-2, I don't know. Some people would, because some people declare disaster in any situation. I don't think we'd be declaring disaster at 2-2 with a loss to Missouri. The difference is the North Carolina game to me. When we were talking about it before the season, I can't remember if we put it on air or not, but we sort of broke down what can this team do in terms of wins and losses. There were, I think, 4 games that were should lose. There was just a few games that were should win and a bunch of toss-ups, right? So what I said was I thought South Carolina could steal one that they shouldn't win. That looks less likely now, but who knows? And then lose one that they should win. The 2 games I picked out were Tennessee, who looks worse than anticipated, but still a losable game, and Missouri. Those are the ones I picked out. So am I completely shocked they lost to Missouri? I'm not. I'm really not.
No.
I think they looked worse than I anticipated doing it.
It's about the performance as
Right,
much
it's about
as it
the
is
performance.
result.
I think it's
It
how
is.
they lost.
It's how
Yeah,
they
that
lost.
bothers
exactly.
people the
That and that's completely fair. I think that my point is the UNC game is the difference as to, if they were 2-2 and you lose to Alabama, okay, you lose to Alabama. You lose to Missouri and maybe look a little bit better doing it, okay, and you've still maybe either beaten or destroyed North Carolina like they should have. Then people are going, okay, 2-2, not ideal, but maybe not a trend.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, what we have is now against, 2 sort of games that they could or should win. Now is it becoming more of a trend? And if they lose to Kentucky this weekend, it'd be hard to argue against it being a trend.
Because
Right?
Carolina's one win is against the worst team they've played, this century?
Worst college football team I've seen
Ever.
at that level.
Yeah,
yes,
at the Division
probably,
I level.
Probably, yeah. I mean, very, very
question about
bad. So yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not someone sitting here saying this will or this won't happen. I don't know. I just know that so far the trends are not great. What that means for this season or the future, we don't know yet. But I think this weekend is huge, and I think if they can rebound and play better, then that'll be an encouraging sign. It doesn't mean they're going to go out and start rolling over people by any means, especially with this schedule. But if they lose, then it'll be even more concerning, because then it'll, I think, officially be a trend that this team's not playing well.
All right, and with that being said, we use this as an opportunity to transition into some talk about the Kentucky game vis-a-vis a little buy or sell. Thanks to the Terry Bishop Group for sponsoring this, one of our favorite segments. Chris, tell us about the Bishop Group.
Bishop Real Estate Group is led by Terry Bishop, former Gamecock quarterback, still a huge supporter of the program. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate in the Columbia Midlands area, then make sure you call Terry Bishop or visit his Facebook page, facebook.com/the Terry Bishop Team. Call him at 803-665-1442. 36 years of real estate experience, former Gamecock quarterback. So if you want a Gamecock guy to help handle your business and someone who knows what he's doing, pretty obvious choice there. We appreciate his support of the podcast.
All right, so I have 4 of these because I thought of 4 that I liked. So we'll do 3, and then we'll do a bonus one because I like to cheat. Number 1, buy or sell. Kentucky scores fewer than 20 points on Saturday. Chris.
Kentucky scores 20?
20 or fewer points. That's how many points South Carolina's defense gave up to Missouri.
Yes, this is true.
But is Ryan Helinski going to throw another pick six? Is he going to?
I feel like Missouri's offense. Okay, so it's just total points surrendered by the team. Okay,
yeah,
I didn't want to make sure we weren't counting.
It's
Like,
defense and special teams scored according to fantasy football, which is stupid. But for the
I think
second side of
Missouri's
the world.
offense is better than Kentucky's, but I'm still going to sell. So my argument makes no sense.
No,
but
no,
I'm
no,
picking.
no, that totally makes
Yeah,
sense. It doesn't
so I'm
have
picking.
to. Yeah.
I will sell, and I say Kentucky scores over 20.
You can have
That's
a
what
funny feeling about that. Now, Sawyer Smith has been statistically one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the SEC since he took over a couple of weeks ago. I think if you're a Carolina fan, you are very accustomed to bad quarterbacks coming in and having career days against you. So that obviously cannot be ruled out. But, Wes, would you buy or sell that Kentucky scores right at or less than 20 points?
I wish that number was a little bit higher, but so buy means I think they will score 20 points.
Yeah, buy means you think they'll score 20 or fewer.
Oh, fewer. So
Yeah.
okay, I buy that they score 20 or fewer.
Oh, nice.
And I will say that because I don't think this Kentucky team is as good as the one the last couple of years that has beaten South Carolina. And even though, it feels like Kentucky's dominated South Carolina, and I'd say they dominated the sort of game flow of the most recent games. Last year, they only scored 24 points, even though it seemed like they just smashed South Carolina. They won 24-10. 2017, they won 23-13. 2016, I think they scored like 17 points. They won 17-10. Kentucky is one of these schools that's just willing, or one of these teams that's willing to just be hard-headed with the run, as we talked about for the first hour. I don't think they care if they score 35 points. They're just going to run the football if they have a lead and try to pound this thing out. So I think South Carolina, I think they'll score right around that number, but I'm going to buy for the sake of buying.
I'm going to buy it too. I think the offense had the headlines for 2 weeks, and people hated the defense because there were missed tackles against Alabama, even though they actually missed fewer tackles than Alabama did because of those 2 long drives they gave against North Carolina. But I have felt generally okay about this defense over the course of the season, and this number, courtesy of SEC StatCat, that's just SEC underscore StatCat on Twitter, sort of bears out what I've seen. For SEC defenses that have played 2 conference games, South Carolina is the league leader in success rate defensively at almost 60%. And for those of you that are wondering what success rate is, that means you hold opposing offenses to fewer than 50% of their yards to gain on first down, fewer than 70% on second down, and fewer than 100% on third and fourth down. So Carolina does a great job of not letting defenses get into 2nd and 5. And if they do get into 2nd and 5, they keep them inside of that 3rd and 2.5, and so on and so forth. And where they've been horrible, where they're one of the worst teams in the conference, if not the worst team in the conference. Actually, the second worst is explosive play percentage at 17%. 12.2% of all South Carolina's defensive snaps, 12% of their defensive snaps have given up a play of at least 15 yards, which is incredible. Which Kentucky does not have the horses to punish Carolina that way, and so I'm going to buy.
Which essentially means they're playing really good defense on most of their snaps, and then they're allowing huge plays on their other snaps that have very much hurt them.
Sounds like the North Carolina game.
They're playing the seldom talked about, redheaded stepchild or awkward cousin of bend don't break defense. They're playing break don't bend defense.
Yes, which is interesting, seeing as how the offense has been incredibly reliant the last year and a third on explosive plays as well. I also think, and to give a guy a little bit of credit that's taken a lot of heat the last year or so, Shirai Green at linebacker has actually been a surprising bright spot, and I think South Carolina will be in that 4-3 a lot more this game. Though, I think Kentucky's going to be hard-headed. They're going to sort of bring a power approach to this game. I think South Carolina will have 3 linebackers on the field a lot, and the fact that Sherrod has played well at that sort of Sam spot and as a backup at some other spots, plus the defensive line has played well, will give those guys room to make plays. And I think that plays to T.J. Brunson's and Ernest Jones' strength. I think with those 2 guys, you start putting them out in space, making them cover guys and stuff. Sometimes some of their weaknesses get exposed, but just an in-the-box game where you're saying who's tougher, who's the man at the point of attack. I think that actually, interestingly enough, plays to South Carolina this year.
Sherrod Greene and Ernest Jones, I think, have improved as much or more than anybody else on the roster. Those two guys have made huge leaps from last season to this season, and it's been encouraging to see. Will Helms, he did a stat breakdown with me on my Monday Get Cocky podcast and said that for a guy that spent most of his career or most of last season in the 50s in terms of run defense, talking about Sherrod Greene, he has been in the 70s for all 4 games this season, and that's kind of mirrors what you've seen. Just watching the game. Eyeball test, as I call it. I think it's just eye test. I call it eyeball test because I'm stupid. Second, buy or sell. Buy or sell, Ryan Helinski will have at least 22 completions this game.
22 completions.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting good at making these numbers up. Giving you something to think about.
Do you have a ready answer?
Yeah, I'll buy that. 22 or more completions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'll buy it. No explanation given.
Cool, good. We don't need one. We don't want one.
22. Yeah, I'll buy. I think, and the reason I was close to selling would be that I think South Carolina will probably. I think this might be an old school SEC football game, especially with the way Muschamp has talked this week. I think South Carolina will get back to some basics on offense and try to run the football. And I think I'm trying to think of what game was that last year. Tennessee game. I feel like South Carolina went completely against their sort of tempo approach and did a lot more just shifts and motions pre-snap. Was hard-headed in the running game, as we've talked about. That was about the time they talked about taking out some of the RPOs last year. I think I could see that type of game plan. So maybe Ryan doesn't throw quite as many passes, which would have possibly put it under. But I think that also means high percentage throws. I don't think he'll have the same issues he did last week. So I'll buy it.
So he was what, 13 of 30 last week? Was that right?
That's right.
Something like that. And then against Alabama, it was 37 of 56 or 36 of 57. So a ton of variance. And then against Charleston Southern, it was 24 of 32.
Just 30. 24
of 30.
I'm going to say he's 22 of 29.
Yeah, so there's so much variance. I
note that.
I want to write that down so we can make fun of him next week when it's exactly right. I want to buy this for the same reason that you do, Wes, but I'm so scared of a 21 of 31 for like 230 yards kind of game. I'm going to sell it because I think with all of the pressure that the coaching staff has taken and they seem to be feeling internally and they have acknowledged it publicly at needing to run the ball more, I think, like you're saying about that Tennessee game, I think we're going to see them probably go like all the way in the other direction. The pendulum's going to swing all the way the other way back, and we're going to see Carolina run the ball a lot, which leads me to buy or sell number 3. South Carolina's running backs, not Ryan Helinski, not Dakereon Joyner, not Brian Edwards jet sweeps. Mondenson, Rico Dowdle, and Tavian Feaster will combine for 25 carries on Saturday. Buy or sell?
Buy. Easy.
Yeah, I'd buy that.
Really? Easy? What if I said 30? I need to make this number
Don't
hard.
change. No, can't change it.
Okay,
no.
all right.
Sorry.
Well, they had combined 14 carries against Missouri, so you think they will almost double that?
Yes, easily. Because they're going to stay. There's no way they struggle to make first downs this week as much as they did.
Whoa. There's no way they let me write that down. Wes says no way South Carolina struggles to make first downs.
What if
100%? There's no way
he's very confident
that they're going to be as bad at staying on the field for at least a first down.
Why?
As they were last week.
Wait. They've been that bad at staying on the field for
not
a year and a half now.
No.
There's no way they were as bad for an entire year as they were in the first half last week. They were as bad at staying on. They had one first down in the first half. When was the last time they went an entire
They've never
Virginia,
been that bad.
right? Virginia
without making a first down?
I'll look up the Virginia stat. I feel like I've become.
But it wasn't for an entire year. Let's not act like for an entire year that they've had 30 yards per half.
No, okay, but you said stay on the field, which is a little bit different. And I'm gonna.
No, I'm saying stay on. They're not going to struggle to stay on the field as bad as they did in the first half last week.
Okay, last year, They lost the time of possession battle to Georgia by 11 and a half minutes.
I'm not talking
No,
about
That's
time of
that's
possession.
what you are talking about.
No.
You said staying on the field.
Stay on the field as bad as they did last week, as in not make a single first down for the majority of the half.
Well, not staying on the field last week looked like a margin of 15 minutes and 40 seconds in time of possession.
I'm not talking about time of possession.
But you are. You cannot separate those things. How can you stay on the field and not have a good time of possession?
No, I'm saying that they are not going to struggle to stay on the field as badly as they did last week, as in they will make enough first downs to then get to the next sequence of plays and run the football to where the numbers are not completely skewed.
And I'm telling you that Carolina 3 times last year were worse than they were last week against Missouri.
But you said for the entire year, this is the offense we've seen.
No, I'm
That was
saying
your
we've
exact words.
seen this dating back to last year when they lost the time of possession battle by 23 minutes to Texas A&M, 17 minutes to Tennessee, and 25 minutes to Virginia. All of those were worse than Missouri. So
In time of possession.
it's not like last week was.
In time of possession.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wes is talking more about first downs.
I'm talking about first down.
But can you explain to me how you can stay on the field and not have a high time of possession?
If you're getting the ball, if you're hitting first downs quickly, I mean that would be
time of
hypothetical.
possession does not directly correlate into if you're making first downs or not.
It's pretty close.
But
We'd have to commission a study on it to really tell.
You can't have 30 first downs in a game and have 10 minutes of the ball.
Nobody's saying that.
No one is saying that.
But
You
that's
also can't
implication.
say that they've been as bad at the Missouri game on offense or moving the ball or getting first downs or time of possession.
Well, they didn't
For
score
a year and
single
a
point
half,
against.
'cause they
No.
haven't.
I'm not saying every game for a year and a half, but I'm saying
That is what you said at the beginning.
Your very first argument is that's what we've seen for an
we
entire
have,
year.
We've seen this dating back to last year. Saturday was not an aberration.
Wait,
it was just the
hold on.
latest
If
chapter
this
in a
is
series
such
of
if this
offensive
is such a
failures.
bad take, why is that your number? Like,
Huh?
is me buying that is such a bad take, then why was that the number?
25? No, because
Yeah.
this is about carries. This isn't about time of possession or first downs.
You brought up time of possession.
Yeah, because I'm saying that's. Wait,
It started
because
it started because Wes said he didn't think that they'll have a problem moving the chain or getting first downs. I'm sorry.
And I'm saying, you made it sound like Missouri was this crazy outlier, and I'm saying we've seen this many times from South Carolina in the last year and a half.
I do think. Okay, time of possession is maybe not an outlier, but what is an outlier is one first down in the first half. You will not find a game where they had one first down or even close.
Did you check the Virginia game?
The Virginia game, they had unofficial count 7.
Wow.
Bad, but not 1. Okay? They scored no points in the first half because they didn't score all game.
Scored no points in the whole game.
So that's bad. Right, but 7 first downs as opposed to 1, and I didn't count up. They ran more. I think they ran more than 17. What would we say? 17 plays against
That
Missouri?
was my just unofficial guess.
Yeah. I think they ran more than that against Virginia. I'm not totally sure, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that should be almost impossible. But Carolina has proven time and again. They've lost the time of possession battle by 20 minutes.
But in some of those games, and I'm not even counting opponent, they scored more points than 0 or 14 on offense. Right, so
They lost time of possession in a lot of games that they had good offensive performances because their offense was entirely based on explosive plays.
Exactly, and they do not have the same weapon in Deebo Samuel. Brian Edwards has actually done a reasonably good job of filling his shoes, but he's not the same guy. This Carolina offense is not built the same way that it was last year. They don't take a lot of shots, and they don't have that game-breaking guy in Deebo Samuel. So it's like they're still trying to rely on the explosive plays to score, but they don't have the horses to do it. So I don't really know where that leaves us. But we have to. This is the longest podcast we've ever done. Here's our bonus: buy or sell. Buy or sell.
You didn't buy or sell?
Yeah, you didn't.
I don't know. Buy, because I think it's going to be. I sold Helinski completions, and I think Carolina will run more than 46 plays. Although I can't be sure of it. What? I'm not saying that they won't have trouble moving the sticks, but you said, oh, well, they won't have trouble moving the sticks, if their inability to move the sticks Saturday was an aberration, which it is not. I said
they will not struggle to move the sticks as well as badly as they did against Missouri, as in it's impossible for them to have just one first down in the first half.
But it's not, is what I'm saying. We've seen similarly horrendous offensive performances, maybe not literally one first down. How many first downs did Carolina finish the game with? Maybe that's a better way to look at it. How many games have had a similarly low number of first downs as Carolina on Saturday? I'm just saying it's not as crazy for Carolina to lay an egg on offense like they did on Saturday because they've done it before recently.
But I'm saying it's not going to be as bad as it was on Saturday.
I'm glad you don't think so.
So you think Ryan Valencia is going to miss all those open throws again?
No. I think he could be like 21-31, like I said, in which case I would be selling that. In which case I'm buying the combined carries because I think Carolina will run at least 46 plays, which also maybe I shouldn't count on that.
South Carolina had 18 first downs against Missouri.
Okay.
And Missouri had 23 first downs.
So we're 18 feels about right for Carolina. Like I bet they average like 20 or 21.
We would have to effort that stat. That's
going to take a while to put together.
Yeah,
but
nobody take that as face value.
Yeah.
Tweet it out. Pearson said.
Bonus.
21.
South Carolina ends the 5-year losing streak to Kentucky this Saturday.
Okay, so you have to buy that they end it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was just
if you buy, you think South Carolina wins.
Right.
I'll buy.
Okay. Christopher?
I don't know. Last week I on Friday was ready to pick Missouri, which I knew I should have and didn't. It's going to make for a bad week, but I would have to sell.
Whew.
I just can't. Kentucky they have not been very good. But I just think based on what we've seen from the South Carolina team, when you take out the performance against Alabama, that was still a loss. It's not convincing. Now, they come out and beat Kentucky, I think that'll make everybody feel better, and I think it's possible. But if it's a thing where we have to pick the game and sort of, place your bet, as it were.
The disparity in energy, life, all those things that are sort of intangible in home games and away games, I mean, really in the last couple of years, but especially this year, has been so stark that I am inclined to say yes. But this also feels like the kind of game where the wheels could officially come off. So, I don't know. I'm just gonna hold on to my stock. I'm not buying it anymore. I'm not selling it.
Oh, you can't do that.
I'm the host, man.
You make us say it.
I don't know. I think Kentucky's bad, but Carolina's not good either. But I think Carolina is underperforming its talent, and I think Kentucky is probably performing to its level of talent. I don't know. I'll buy. All right, this is the longest podcast we've ever done already, and we got to go quick here, so we'll do this. By the way, thanks again so much to the Bishop team for sponsoring our buy or sell, a really heated buy or sell, as this whole podcast has been, which is terrific. Jamias Williams, were y'all as surprised as Will Muschamp seemed to be that he decided to redshirt and transfer?
Yeah. I would say that he left in the middle of the year or 4 games into the year.
Yeah, that was surprising. Yeah.
Obviously, it hasn't worked out for Jamias the way anyone planned, I guess. But, yeah, I'm surprised. I think at the end of the year, I actually got a text earlier that day and, said Jamias is transferring, and I asked, well, like now? Or like he's going to transfer? And they said, well, I think it's going to be now. That part surprised me the most. I get that's going to be a trend because of the combination of, the transfer portal and how common it is for guys to transfer, plus the new redshirt rule. Those two things sort of combine to create that. But, yeah, I would say, yeah, if it was at the end of the year and he said, you said he's going to graduate and then transfer, wouldn't have been shocked at all.
Yeah, and, the whole thing is because of the new rule where you can play in a few games and then 4 games, and then you can sort of cut bait and go get a fresh start. That's why it happened. I was surprised at the timing, too, but his role, I didn't even realize until after the game that he had played fewer snaps than usual against Missouri.
36, I think.
36 is right. And I think, just based on what we've observed and maybe heard, I think that number would have either stayed there or maybe even diminished further, really. And, I think, like Wes said, a few things that were sort of out of Jamias' control. Had some shoulder issues during his time. And I think those things hampered his development as well. But also, I think they were making some moves in the secondary where you saw his playing time diminish against Missouri, and maybe that would have happened more. They've got to get better at that position. They've talked about that a ton. And so it's just a deal where I think he's decided to move on and go get a fresh start somewhere else.
Did y'all listen to my radio show yesterday on 107.5?
Unable was just swamped.
Good.
Sorry.
I was hoping that you wouldn't. I don't expect that you do on a regular basis anyway. But before I asked you this, I wanted to make sure that you hadn't already heard the answer. I'm going to read off a list of players, and I need you to tell me what they all have in common. Okay?
Oh, yeah, okay.
All right. Jake Fromm State Farm. DeAndre Swift, Malik Davis, Tristan Colon Castillo, Andrew Thomas, Solomon Kinley, Sadiq Charles, Alberto Cuibunum, DK Metcalf, Jamon Osborne, Nick Coe, Kalavon Chason. I think I say his name wrong, but he's the guy that wears number 18 for LSU. Big Cat Bryant, Anthony Hines, Dylan Moses, Greedy Williams, CJ Henderson, Marco Wilson, Jemias Williams. What do those names have in common? Which, by the way, one of those things is not like the other, which is sort of the point I'm making here.
I know one, I think. Maybe not.
Where are they all from?
That's where Tim Hill went yesterday when I asked him, and that is not correct. He was thinking those were that was like a recruiting ranking from like the state of Georgia or something like that.
No. Chason's from like Texas or Louisiana. Got a Louisiana name.
It is Chason? Okay.
I think so.
All right, cool.
You know?
I thought at least some of the guys are from the 2017 class. No,
You're
I don't
warm.
know. Warm?
That's the
2017.
2017 SEC All-Freshman class.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
That was the season that Jemias Williams played nickel. And you
Yeah.
and you too and I have talked about this on the podcast where I was like, he played well at nickel as a freshman, and then they moved him to safety, and then they stuck him at safety, and then he wasn't very good at safety, and then people got mad at him for not being good at safety because he's not a safety, and now he's transferring probably to go somewhere and play nickel. That's
Nickel
a
or
good
corner?
list.
I mean, maybe.
And that list is not a 100% hit rate. There are some guys here that didn't totally pan out, like Trey Smith, for example, but he didn't pan out because he had blood clots. Malik Davis has, had injuries throughout the course of his career. There are other guys who haven't panned out, but by and large, the talent in that group is undeniable. And this is voted on by the coaches, not the media. So they thought Jemias Williams was one of the best 4 freshman defensive backs in the SEC. With Greedy Williams, who went in the second round to Cleveland, CJ Henderson, who's about to be a first-round pick, and Marco Wilson, who's a starter. And Carolina just can't figure out how to use him correctly?
I don't think it's all that. No.
Okay.
We're going to get into another 18-minute argument. 2018, right, he's already got a shoulder that had been bothering him from high school. It was a redo on a shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So he plays an 8 game. He's not as effective in that role because, ostensibly, of the shoulder. And then he ends up having the season-ending shoulder injury. And then coming into his junior year, he was limited in the spring, so that takes some reps away, right? And then you're playing him at safety. And so some of it's injury. Some of it's maybe, okay, you move him to safety. I mean, really, they need – I think it speaks more that maybe at times he was the best option at safety. That can speak to recruiting some, right? I think
you look at the rest of that 2017 class of defensive backs, and it is not pretty.
It was not, and I think it speaks more to that. Then you look at Jemias, even though he's healthy's a relative term right now. I think maybe the shoulders still may be an issue, but there was some busts this year, and you could say, well, it's on the coaches to get him right, and that's true also. But
I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I just think it's very interesting. And like I mentioned,
there
are guys on that list that haven't had their careers, match the level of Greedy Williams or, Jake Fromm because of injuries. And you can totally put Jemias in that class. You can also say, hey, you're not going to hit literally 100% of those. Some of the names I didn't read off are guys that have been, starters or regular contributors but aren't like superstars. And Jemias could totally fall into that category. But I went back because I remembered him being an all-freshman or an SEC on the all-freshman team playing nickel in 2017 and just thinking how far, he's come since then. And I was like, I wonder what the rest of that list is. I bet it's kind of a mixed bag. And I was shocked when I saw it was just like stud, first-round guy, second-round guy, first-round guy, stud, all SEC, all-American. I was like, man, like this thing is a really good predictor of who's going to be at the top of his position group in a couple of years, and it didn't pan out for Jemias. And you wish him the best. I hate that it didn't pan out again, whether it's injury, whether it's him being put in the wrong spot, either because the coaching staff misevaluated his talent or because of necessity, because the rest of the guys in that class didn't pan out. It's just really unfortunate because, he clearly had the talent to be a successful defensive back in the SEC, and it just didn't work out for him here.
Yeah, I think you saw as the year went on, his freshman year, that teams were starting to sort of realize they could pick on him because of his size when he was left in man coverage at the nickelback spot. There's so many run responsibilities, especially this day and age with all the spread offenses that your nickelback at times almost has to play like a linebacker and set the edge and stuff like that. So I think 5'8", 180 pounds, that just put him at a disadvantage at times. We even saw, I remember last year, I think it was his freshman year, about the Florida game or so later in the year, South Carolina started, even though he was listed as a nickel in 3rd and longs, they started swapping Chris Lamons down to nickel and putting Jemias really at a free safety role to keep teams from trying to match him up with bigger guys in the slot. So I think, whether obviously it hasn't worked out, whether it's worked out or not, the thought process was just trying to put him in a position where he's a little bit further away from the line of scrimmage, where he's maybe covering more grass as sort of a free safety as opposed to getting matched up with a man that's bigger than him in man coverage. And obviously it hasn't worked out. I was looking at some of the stats from PFF on him as a freshman. 76% of his targets that were thrown at him were complete, which I don't actually know where that number stacks up. But I think it was just a matter of trying to, A, put the best 5 on the field, and B, maybe try and keep him from being in some of those mismatch situations.
Wes, who won last week's Slotchke's Challenge?
That is a good question. Someone on our second winner from the Proving Ground. From Fighting Gamecocks Forum would be Jonesy21.
Jonesy21, congratulations. Exact final score or just the closest?
Just closest.
Okay.
We had a few people picking Missouri. Mostly everybody picked South Carolina, so he didn't have to nail it to win this week. But
what did he win again?
$60 tailgating tray to Slotsky's Bakery and Cafe. Also, possibly little known fact is that Cinnabon is in Slotsky's as well.
Yeah.
So cinnamon rolls there are awesome. You can go to 529 Bush River Road, Columbia, South Carolina 29210, or 1305 Knox Abbott Drive, Casey, South Carolina 29033. Call them for catering, 803-605-1686. Again, want to thank Slotsky's Deli for being our sponsor here on the show and on our forums.
I'm going there.
Yeah,
right
you're going there after this.
I cannot wait.
I would go with you.
We normally do, but
we're now like 10 minutes away from my radio show, so I can't go for lunch now. But I did go on Saturday. Got the Italian. They have a couple Italian sandwiches. The one with like roasted red pepper on ciabatta was really good. And, of course, a cookie. Tweeted out the picture of the cookie because everyone needs to see how glorious it is. They have the big, fat, like chocolate chunks that I just love. So that's awesome. So that was a winner you said from the Fighting Gamecock Forum. So if y'all want to play the Slotsky's Challenge and have a chance to win the $60 tailgate to Slotsky's, you can do that on the Fighting Gamecock Forum if you're not a subscriber. But if you want to be a subscriber to Gamecock Central, you can also play on the Insiders Forum and just use the exclusive podcast code GCPod to be an insider for 1 month to Gamecock Central for free. Chris, you were raising your finger.
We didn't get to talk about Kentucky in as much depth probably as we intended originally. That's okay. We'll have all that content on Gamecock Central this week. I did have some stats that I wanted to run down on the past 3 losses. Because
stat of the day, bop, bop.
Beautiful. Those are the 3, Will Muschamp era games. So one thing you look at is, you always think of turnovers in this game. South Carolina said 2016, South Carolina actually won the turnover battle 2-0, which I did not remember. And they ran the ball 35 times. So, in terms of carries, they were a little bit more hard-headed. The problem was they ran for 2.6 yards a carry. We also in this game frequently talk about starting fast. So they actually punted on their first possession, but they did score a touchdown in the first quarter. I think it was the only one of the game, right? I don't even have the number in front of me. But they lost 2016. I don't know. They didn't score a lot of points either way. 91 rushing yards for Carolina. Kentucky had 216. So that's an issue. 2017, South Carolina scored on the first play of the game.
Debo.
But ended up only scoring, I think, 13 points total, right? The turnovers are even at 2 apiece. But again, here's the disparity. Kentucky had 182 rush yards. South Carolina had 54. rushed the ball 20 times for 2.7 yards. Then in last year's game, the single biggest issue, turnovers in that game. South Carolina had 4, Kentucky had 1. South Carolina was a little bit more successful running it, 35 rushes, 3.7 yards, but they couldn't get much going on offense. Otherwise, they punted on their first possession and did not score a touchdown in the first quarter. Rushing disparity was a little bit less. Kentucky still went 195. South Carolina had 128, so that was better. Bigger difference was turnovers in that game. They moved the ball actually a little bit better, got themselves into bad situations. Josh Allen wrecked shop a good bit. So I think, you just look at themes in this game. Kentucky, 216 rushing yards, 182, 185. That's a number that has to go down, obviously, in this contest. They got to make Kentucky do what they did against Mississippi State last week. Now, Kentucky still had 154 rushing yards last week. A.J. Rose only had 9 carries for 105 yards. So pretty good with a long of 31. But Sawyer Smith threw the ball 41 times.
That's the key.
Had 15 completions. And Mark Stoops was none too pleased about any of that. So I'd look for them to try to reestablish their identity. Biggest key for South Carolina. I don't even know if you can say it's turnover margin based on these. They've had it even one year and they won it by 2 one year. But they have got to do better in terms of winning the rushing yardage battle.
Which you feel good about, not only because it seems like Carolina, for the first time in that stretch since Will Muschamp has gotten to Columbia, those last 3 Kentucky games, has able-bodied running backs and an offensive line that I think generally blocks the run pretty well. Rico Dowdle is a better running back this year than obviously previous iterations of Rico Dowdle and probably anybody since maybe even Mike Davis. He's been tremendous this year. Only got 8 carries last week, obviously, but in the Alabama game was excellent. Was good in the North Carolina game. Was good in the Charleston Southern game. I think that's something you lean on. And also, when you have Javon Kinlaw anchoring that interior defensive line, that goes a long way to helping win the point of the attack and slow down Kentucky's rushing attack and putting the game in Sawyer Smith's hands, which is exactly what you want to and need to do. Wes, did you want to gush about Javon Kinlaw for just a minute?
Yeah, I did. I'm going to save this for our newsletter for tonight, so we'll have that knocked out. But Javon Kinlaw tied for the SEC lead among interior linemen in sacks. He's way up there in pressures and way up there in PFF's grades as well. I think
the 4th best defensive player at any position in overall PFF grade in the SEC. Really
has been just outstanding. And an interesting point is that Calvin Taylor for Kentucky, as I was looking at my Javon Kinlaw stuff on PFF, Taylor's name consistently popped up as well in the same stratosphere as Javon, either right behind him or right ahead of him, actually. So if South Carolina is going to run the football on Saturday, controlling Calvin Taylor on the Kentucky defensive front absolutely has to be a key, because if he's been as good as Javon this year, then he's been outstanding, because I think Javon has been South Carolina's best player through 4 games.
All right. Plenty more Kentucky stuff. Like Chris mentioned, didn't get to as much of it as we wanted to today, but Gamecock Central will have all of that for you, some of it free, some of it you'll need to be an insider. And like I said, exclusive podcast code GCPod if you're not an insider and you want to be for a month for free. Thank you all so much for listening today and sticking with us. It was entertaining. We were all fired up. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast if you like it and you want to hear more of it. Also share it with your friends. Be sure to be on standby for Wes and Chris's No Huddle ACPs on Monday and my Get Cocky podcast on Monday and on Friday. Y'all try to enjoy the Kentucky game. It's a night game. Carolina might win. Who knows? But regardless, we will be back with more breakdown next week.